Collapse and comeback. At 9 minutes past 4 in the morning, a single file left CrowdStrike servers and began copying itself onto millions of computers around the world. It was about 40 kilobytes, smaller than a phone photo. Nobody clicked anything. Nobody was hacked. And yet within hours, planes sat grounded on runways. Hospitals turned patients away, and live news anchors read the headlines in front of glowing blue error screens. The most trusted security software on Earth had just done all of this to itself. This is the story of the largest computer outage in history, and the strangest part is who caused it. Not a criminal gang, not a foreign government, but one of the most respected names in cybersecurity. On the 19th of July, 2024, an estimated 8.5 million Windows computers crashed, in nearly the same way, within the same few hours. The company behind it was called CrowdStrike. For most people it began as a small, familiar frustration. A check-in screen frozen solid at the airport. A card machine that suddenly refused every payment. A doctor's computer that simply would not switch on. Only slowly did it become clear that the very same blue screen was appearing on the very same morning in Sydney, in London, and in New York. That this was not a local glitch, but one single failure happening almost everywhere on Earth at once. To see how a single file could do that, you have to know what CrowdStrike sells. Its flagship product is called Falcon, and it belongs to a category known as EDR, endpoint detection and response. In plain terms, it is a guard that watches every computer in an organization for the first signs of a break-in. To watch that closely, Falcon runs deep inside Windows, in the core called the kernel, the layer that controls the machine itself. Living down there lets it stop threats the instant they appear. It also means that if Falcon ever stumbles, it does not fall alone. It takes the whole computer with it. CrowdStrike was built on speed. It was founded in 2011 by a security veteran named George Kurtz, who had watched a rival firm fumble a huge breach and was convinced protection had to move faster. His promise was simple: push defenses to customers constantly, in many tiny updates a day, quicker than attackers could invent new tricks. It worked. By 2024, CrowdStrike was worth more than $80 billion and guarded banks, airlines, hospitals, and government agencies. Customers trusted those updates so completely that most let them install automatically. No review, no waiting, no second look. That trust rested on a quiet distinction. CrowdStrike's actual program code went through careful testing before release. But Falcon also accepted a second, faster kind of update, small configuration files that did not change the program. They simply told the existing software about new threats to watch for. Because they seemed low risk, these files skipped the slow, tested lane and shipped almost instantly to every customer at once. On the 19th of July, one of those fast files carried a fatal mistake. Internally, the file was called Channel File 291, and its job was to help Falcon spot attacks that abuse a normal Windows feature called named pipes, a routine way that programs talk to each other. But the file was malformed. The part of Falcon that read it expected 21 separate pieces of information. This file supplied only 20. So when the software reached for that 21st value, the one that was never there, it read a patch of memory that did not belong to it. Deep in the kernel, that kind of mistake has no soft landing. Windows did the only safe thing it knows how to do. It stopped dead. The blue screen of death. There was supposed to be a safety net. Before a file like this ships, CrowdStrike runs it through an automated checker whose entire purpose is to catch exactly this kind of mismatch. But the checker itself had a bug. It waved the broken file straight through, confident there was nothing wrong. So the one guardrail standing between a small internal error and 8.5 million crashes failed silently, in the very release that needed it most. And then it got worse. Because Falcon loads in the very first moments a computer starts up. Every time an affected machine rebooted to try to recover, it loaded the poisoned file again and crashed again. Restarting, the first instinct of every frustrated user, only restarted the disaster. Millions of machines fell into an endless loop, crashing, rebooting, and crashing once more, with no way to break out on their own. Because the file had gone out to everyone at the same moment, the world broke at the same moment. In the United States, some emergency phone lines were reportedly disrupted. Hospitals postponed surgeries and fell back to pen and paper. Banks, payment terminals, television studios, and shipping ports all ran on Windows, and many of them ran Falcon. At airports, departure boards went dark and staff wrote out boarding passes by hand. This did not spread slowly like a virus creeping from machine to machine. It arrived everywhere at once, simply because the update had. No company was hurt more than Delta Airlines. The crash scrambled the system Delta uses to track where its pilots and cabin crews are, and that system never caught back up. For 5 straight days, the cancellations kept coming, around 7,000 flights in all, stranding an estimated 1.4 million travelers. Delta later put its losses from those 5 days at more than $500 million. Now the cruelest twist of all. CrowdStrike spotted the error and pulled the file in just 78 minutes. But that came far too late for the machines already down, because a computer trapped in the blue screen loop cannot get online to receive the fix. There was no remote cure, no single button to press. Someone had to walk up to each machine in person, start it in a stripped-down emergency mode called safe mode by hand, and delete the one bad file. Every laptop, every server, every airport kiosk and hospital terminal, one at a time. And where a company had encrypted its hard drives for security, staff first had to hunt down that machine's unique recovery key just to get inside. Millions of computers, each one needing a living human being physically standing in front of it. The reckoning was enormous. In the days that followed, CrowdStrike's share price fell about 25%, wiping out roughly $22 billion in market value. One insurance study estimated that the direct losses to Fortune 500 companies alone came to around $5.4 billion, and warned that ordinary cyber insurance would cover only a small slice of it. Delta sued CrowdStrike for $500 million. CrowdStrike fired back that Delta's own outdated systems were what slowed its recovery. A judge later allowed much of that lawsuit to move forward. Line the numbers up side by side, and the scale is hard to ignore. Delta's own reported losses, the wider Fortune 500 total, and the market value that simply evaporated from CrowdStrike itself. Every one of these bars traces back to a single small file that carried one value too few. CrowdStrike promised to change the way it works. From now on, it said, these fast updates would be released in stages, reaching a handful of machines first, then more, then everyone, so that a broken file could be caught while the damage was still small. Microsoft, the maker of Windows, began looking at ways to let security software do its job without living quite so deep inside the operating system. And the outage itself became a case study, taught in boardrooms and universities, in what happens when convenience and trust are allowed to outrun caution. CrowdStrike's own review concluded that stronger testing would have caught the flaw before it ever shipped. And here is the number that lingers. The 8.5 million machines that went down were less than 1% of all the Windows computers on Earth. Less than 1% was enough to ground planes, freeze hospitals, and stall the modern world for a day. The real lesson is not that one company slipped. It is how much of everything we now depend on stands on the same few foundations, so that when just one of them cracks, all of us feel it fall. One file, one missing value, 8.5 million blue screens. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. New collapses and comebacks land 3 times a week.